make a way. You'll make a way, whatever it takes. There's nothing your love won't endure. I know that you are always up to something good. Through the darkest night, you are by my side. You are always faithful. Through my fear and doubt, you will lead me out. You are always able. Through the darkest night, you are on my side. You are always faithful. Through my fear and doubt, you will lead me out. You are always able. Faithful. And I know that you are always up to something good. I know that you are always up to something good. You'll make a way, whatever it takes. There's nothing your love won't endure. I know that you are always up to something good. You'll make a way, whatever it takes. There's nothing your love won't endure. I know that you are always up to something good. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. And I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child child of God. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. I know the night won't last. Your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, and this is my confidence. You've never failed. Your promise still stands, and great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your I'll see you do it again. You made a way when there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, and this is my confidence. You've never failed. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, and this is my confidence. You never fail me yet. Will you pray with me? God, you've never failed us. Through our hardships and our struggles, you've always been there. We ask today that our hearts and our minds remain open to your love, to your light, to all the ways that you are with us. It's in your name that we pray.
The table is where life happens. It's where imagination runs wild, where lessons are learned, and wonders are built. The table is where time can stop, where wounds are comforted, and freedom begins. It's where we find peace. And we laugh till it hurts. The table is where we gather with family, new and old, to share stories, to nourish our bodies, to enrich our souls. The table is where we give thanks, and where we remember what great gifts we have been given.
Well, good morning. My name is Michael Scott, and I am the pastor here at the Table Blue Springs. And I want to thank you for being here. Every week when you walk in, you're always handed something, right? We're always about doing things in the community. We're always about reaching out. And those two things you would have been given were what we would call a bulletin or a newsletter. And it kind of tells you about why we're here, who we are, why we do, and how we do it. And so I invite you to look at those things, to get engaged in some way or another. And at the end of the sermon, you'll also be challenged with a way in which you can apply this sermon, hopefully, into your lives. You're also given another card. That card is an invite card. We hand them out every week. And last week at the end of service, one of my friends who's been coming to church here for the last month comes back and he gives it back to me. He says, "We go to church here, I don't need this." And I said, "I wasn't inviting you. That card is for you to invite somebody else." I was like, apparently I need to be clear about this. We believe in being invitational, about being welcoming, about being inclusive. And so that card that you get, that little card that says join us for worship, that's for you to give to somebody else to come and to join this little community that we have here that meets on Sunday mornings and throughout the week in our homes, out in our businesses, and out in our community. So I thought I should be clear about that this week since there has been some confusion. So please invite somebody to be a part of the things that we are doing and saying and participating in here in Blue Springs. Now, how many of you, outside of family and outside of work, have a group of people that you meet with at least a couple times a month? Right? I think most of us probably have some kind of group that we meet with, that we do things with. I'm heavily involved in my kids' sports, whether that's Brian with soccer, or my daughter Kira with volleyball, or Kylie with dance. And so we find ourselves traveling quite a bit, doing something. So I have all these other little communities that I'm a part of. And if I had to guess, you do too. Now, some of you in this room, and I won't call anybody out like Ryan, like to do lazy man sport like golf. And so I'm just giving him a hard time. Ryan's sitting up front, I can see him. So now I don't play golf. Now, I live near a golf community, and Ryan texts me at least once a week about going and playing golf, and I don't play golf, and so it's never going to happen, dude. So anyway, but I happen to find myself in one of these small communities playing golf. Now, I'm not good at golf. I own a set of clubs. I can drive a cart, right? I can enjoy a beverage on a course, but I'm not good at golf. And I was doing this charity tournament, right? So, you got to do these charity tournaments sometimes. Anybody else do that? Like, you try to give back, and so you go play. You play golf every Friday. You don't count. And so, I found myself, and I think it was called a four-man scramble, I think is what it was. So we get there, and they divide us up into four-man teams, and we didn't know each other beforehand, so this wasn't like a pre-made team, like you show up and they put you all together. And so there was four of us, 3 men and a woman. And we get there, and we're talking, and, I got my golf clubs in the back, and we go around, everybody's like, what do you do, right? And I get to my part, and I'm like, I'm a pastor, right? And, of course, everybody puts their drink down, and they stop cussing, because that's what you do when you meet a pastor. And I'm like, no, it's fine. No, you're good. I know it's 8 a.m., but go ahead and have your beer. And so, because it's socially acceptable to drink in the morning when you're golfing, apparently. Anyway, so I'm sitting there. We're in a golf cart, right? And so she's like, you're a pastor? I'm like, yeah, I'm a pastor. She goes, I know one clean joke. I'm like, oh, by all means, then tell me. And so she starts to tell me this clean joke because I'm a pastor, and I can't hear dirty jokes, right? Our ears shut off. And so they instill it in seminary. I don't know how it works, but it does. And so we're sitting in this golf cart, and she goes, all right, it's a golf joke. She's like, so Moses and Jesus are playing golf, right, as they do. And they're playing golf, and Jesus is up, and he gets up to the tee, and he's like, and there's a water hazard. Am I saying that right? Is it a water hazard? Water hazard, okay. I think that means pond to the average person, and or body of water. But it's a water hazard because it causes chaos in your life if you're golfing, and in my case, it makes me angry. I don't know why, but water makes me angry when I golf. And so Jesus comes up, right, and he's with Moses, and he's going to golf, and he's like, now listen, I'm going to get a hole in one. And Moses is like, no, you're not, Jesus. He goes, I'm going to do this. And so he gets up there. I've seen Tiger Woods do it, right? See, I've seen Tiger Woods smack this ball from here straight into that little gopher hole 567 yards away, okay? So Jesus gets up, and he smacks the ball, and what happens, right? Just like when Ryan plays, the ball goes into the water. And so the ball's in the water, and what does Moses do? Moses is like, I got this, Jesus. And you guys know how this is going to go, right? It's Moses. What does Moses do when he looks for golf balls? He parts the water. So Moses does his thing, as he does, right? And Moses is parting the water, and they can't find Jesus' golf ball anywhere, right? And Jesus is like, I've seen Tiger Woods do this. I know I can do this, right? So he tees up again, and he smacks the ball, and guess what happens, right? It goes in the water. And so, these guys are behind them, right? They're, waiting. They're in line. They're behind Jesus and Moses is like, I'm so sorry, guys. Jesus, he does this all the time, right? And so, anyway, so they don't know them. He's like, who's your buddy? What's he doing? So Jesus walks down. He goes to the water. And what does Jesus do? It's water. He walks on the water. And these guys are like, oh, my gosh, who does he think he is? Jesus? And Moses goes, yes, he is Jesus. He thinks he's Tiger Woods. It's a true story. No, that part's not true. But, I was told that golf story. That was the one clean joke that she knew. But it was amazing how a joke and how a story sitting in a golf cart, like immediately connected us, right? Now, we may not have had a physical table. We had cup holders. It's kind of like a table in between us, right? Because we've been talking about our tables, and we've been talking about looking at our priorities and how do we prioritize our tables, because it's not just about sitting around a table. That's part of it, but the table represents something else. It represents what is important to us. How can we engage in conversation, in relationships? How can we be in service to each other? The important conversations happen when we're with other people. The table just happens to be the tool. The food just happens to be the tool. The beverage in your hands just happens to be the tool for which you can engage in conversation with people. Now, for some of you, that terrifies you, right? My wife's one of them. She doesn't like meeting new people. She's not mad at you when she meets you. She just doesn't know you, okay? I'm calling her out. I'm going to be in trouble for that one on the way home. Like, some of you don't like that. But if you think about it for just a moment, the closest people to you, like we're usually eating or having a drink or hanging out, doing kids or something. But when we do that and relationships are built and we share our stories with one another, something beautiful happens. And so we kicked off the series at the beginning of this month and we said, that starts at home. At home, sitting around our tables, eating, preparing food. Not only is it healthier for us, but families that do that have less alcohol abuse from children, less drug abuse from children. They actually are thinner. Now, I find when I cook and eat, I don't have that effect on me, but statistically, if you make your food, right, it's supposed to be better for you. And so you're supposed to have better health. And I challenge everyone to eat at home, at least try 3 meals. And it's not about the food. It's about what are the conversations you're having. How did your day go? Because we don't do this that often, right? We've forgotten. We've gotten so busy with life that we've forgotten what's important to us. Last week, I challenged all you to prioritize your tables at work. I told a story about Laura Bowen, who works at a bank, and we've been collecting toiletry items, right? We're going to pack these kits here in a few months, and we'll hand them out to people in our neighborhoods who may not have resources like a razor or shampoo or soap or conditioner or lotion, things like this, deodorant. And so she came to me, she said, I want to put a collection bin in my office. And she did it, and we're collecting stuff. And I challenge all of you, many of you did this at your companies. Many of you, I sent you an Amazon wish list, which I found out what it was for the first time last week. Many of you ordered, my wife's laughing at me because she probably has, I don't know, we won't talk about her buying habits. Anyway, don't go there, Mike, don't go there. Okay, so all these things, right? And so I encourage you to do this at your places of work, and you did it. This week, we're going to focus on how can we prioritize our tables in our communities, right? Whatever community you find yourself in, how can you prioritize that table? Because our community tables, they're more than just places that we play and that we relax and that we unwind. Our community tables, like our work tables and our home tables, are our opportunity when we are meeting new people in new circles. It's our opportunity to love on everybody, to spread kindness, to spread joy, to be generous. Often we get really busy and we run 90 miles an hour and we're constantly going and we're moving and we forget that why we're there at that game, right, with our kids, is to be in the moment. And sometimes in the moment, right, means that something else is happening around you that you need to participate in. I'll give an example of that here in a few moments. Actually, I'm going to do it now. I got off track. I should stick to my notes more. So earlier this year, one of the tables, circles that I run in outside of home and work is my daughter's volleyball team. And we travel, they travel a lot more than I travel, but I got to travel with them one time earlier this year. And they were all staying at a hotel, and we had an Airbnb. Because come to find out, we were supposed to be at the hotel, but my wife doesn't follow directions, and so she booked something else. And so nobody's laughing at this. My wife is the rule follower to a T, okay? It's like she follows all the rules, but we ended up staying at an Airbnb, and so we invited everybody over one night to our place. So we're at these volleyball games, and we're talking, and we're hanging out, we're doing all this stuff, and we invite everybody over, and again, not everybody knows what I do, so it comes out, right? I'm a pastor, and usually when people hear that, aside from stop the cussing that they're doing or whatever else, they usually will ask me questions, like I've been hurt, or I've experienced this from Christians, or I went to church and Have you heard these stories in our communities? There's a lot of people who have been hurt by Christianity and from church and from people who claim to speak for God or to be godly or Christ-like. And this certain situation happened to be one of those. One of the people we were talking with had a spouse that grew up, and he's a PK, right? He's a preacher's kid. And so his parents, and there's lots of hurt and pain, and there's been a rejection of faith in the church. And I got to share my story about how I think a lot of us have been hurt by people. It's not unique to the Christian world, ironically. And that hurt and pain are things that often bring us together, that can actually bond us. And we had this beautiful conversation. Stacey, you were there, remember that? We're sitting there, the football game's on, but I couldn't tell you almost anything about the football game, right? There's probably some bad team playing like the Cowboys or something like that. And so Sean is up here with a Cowboys jersey on, so I had to get that jab in because the rest of us are wearing good jerseys like Chiefs. And so, but I couldn't tell you what the score was, but I could tell you about our conversations that night. And I could tell you about who I was having conversations with, right? Something beautiful happened in that moment, a moment that I found myself in. And honestly, we were actually sitting in a living room around this big old glass coffee table. And that opportunity, that when it arose, I think some lives changed that night. We didn't have an altar call. We didn't have a come to Jesus, but we had some really good conversation. And conversations were started, healing began to take place, deconstructed began to happen so that something new could emerge. No longer from a place of pain, but from a place of healing and of wholeness. And it happened in a small living room with a small group of people. Now, why do I keep using that word small, right? Here at this church, we have small groups. We call them roundtable groups, right? And the reason why we believe they should be smaller and not large is actually biblical. And we're going to read a story this morning. Now, this is a story from Jesus' life. Now, Jesus had many miracles. We read about them in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And in those 4 different accounts, right, those 4 different books, we get different versions of very similar stories. Matthew, Mark, and Luke have a lot of the same stories. John is often unique and kind of an outlier. Doesn't always share all the same stories. But there's one story, and there's only one story about miracles that shows up in all 4 Gospels. And it's a story, now you've probably heard this, about Jesus feeding 5,000 people. I don't know why I'm grabbing that. I want to grab this. How many of you heard that story? Jesus, right? And what did Jesus have? He had 5 loaves of bread. Come on, don't be shy. 5 loaves of bread, right? And 2 fish, right? For some reason, when I was a kid, it was fishes, but I think fish is plural, so it's fine. You can say that. And so that's the story we're going to read. And you're going to find out why, here in a minute, why it's significant. Now, it obviously has significance because it's the only miracle that shows up in all 4 of the Gospels. This made such an impact on the disciples that all of them remembered it this way, which is unique. There's no other story, no other miracle, at least, in the Bible that shows up in all 4 accounts. I'm going to read from Luke, in Luke's account, in Luke 9. So here's the scene, okay? Jesus has been out. They've traveled from town to town. He's going from place to place. People follow him, right? This is what Jesus does. This is what he invites us to do, right? Jesus says, follow me. And so he goes from place to place. He's healing people. Jesus often went off by himself. He observed Sabbath. He had some time, some downtime, some time when he got away and was alone. In this setting, Jesus has been alone for a little bit. He comes back. He's exhausted, right? And he finds himself, and all these people have gathered together and have followed him, okay? It says, the sun was low in the sky, and soon it will be dusk. The 12 come to Jesus with advice, right? That's the setup. His 12 best friends, we call them the disciples, they come to Jesus, and they're suggesting something. So here's what they suggest. The disciples say, send the crowd away so that they can find lodging and food in the nearby villages and countryside. We're out here in the middle of nowhere, right? So they're out teaching, healing, working. It's getting late, and what do they want to do? They want to do the easy thing. They're ready to go to bed. Anybody here go to bed early? Jeff and Brittany were over at our house earlier this week, and it hit like 8 o'clock, and we're all like, oh my gosh, we have got to go to bed. Like 8 o'clock, that's my window. Thankfully, they're as old as I am, so actually, I don't think Brittany is, but it doesn't matter. They're old souls like I am. How about that? I mean, I can relate to this. I'm like the disciples. Like, Jesus, come on, man, we put a long day in. It's getting late. Let's go home. Send them off, okay? Jesus, this is how he responds. No, you give them something to eat. And then we go back to the disciples. They said, are you kidding? There's at least 5,000 men here, not to mention the women and the children. All we have is 5 loaves and 2 fish. The only way we could provide them would be to go to a nearby town and buy cartloads of food. And that would cost a small fortune. How many of you have ever thought that, right? Like, Jesus, we're ready to go to bed. And now we got to go shopping, right? Now we got to go to the grocery store, market, whatever. We got to go make food, right? Somebody this morning who was on the welcome team was late this morning because she was cooking at home. And I won't call Brittany out for that. But what was it? You're making creme brulee, right? So you know this. You get this, right? I mean, if this isn't my life, I don't know what is, okay? They're like, Jesus, we can't do it. It's not possible, okay? So Jesus is like, here's it. Do this, okay? He says, organize them in little communities of about 50 people each and have them sit down. So what's Jesus' answer to this? When we have dilemmas in our life, when things seem too big, when they seem too distant, when they seem too hard, when we're tired, when we're exhausted, do we run off and go home and go to sleep? Well, sometimes we do. But Jesus is like, no, when things seem hard, big, out of control, like we can't do it, no, double down, man. He says, but do it in small groups, because life is easier in small groups, okay? So they do what Jesus says, and soon groups of 50 are scattered across the landscape. Then Jesus takes the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and he looks up to the heaven. He praises God for the food, takes each item, and breaks it into fragments. Then he gives the fragments to the 12 disciples and tells them to distribute the food to the crowd. Everyone eats. Everyone is satisfied. Nobody goes away hungry. In fact, when the disciples recover the leftovers, they have 12 baskets of broken pieces. So not only did this amazing miracle happen, right, where the small amount of food was multiplied, and it fed 5,000 men. Then it says there's women and children, right? So was there 10,000? Was there 15? Just groups and groups and groups of people. I don't know how that works. That's miraculous. And I think sometimes when we read that story, it's easy for us to focus on that part, right? Because that makes for a great story in our heads, and it's wonderful. But I think if we stop there and we only accept it as a miracle of food, then we miss the other miracle that's also happening right here. The other miracle is we, like the disciples, get tired and exhausted, and it's hard to do things. See, we actually find life when we can divide up that work, when we can break it down into a small group. We find life in those moments. The other miracle of the story isn't that there's enough food and enough bread. The miracle of this story that Jesus is trying to teach us, I believe, is that no matter where we are in life, whether we're out in a field or out in the middle of nowhere, when we're not close to a grocery store or close to town, when we're away from home, that what we have in that moment is enough. And that we can learn to share that with other people, that it's enough and it's satisfying and it helps us. To me, that miracle, just as important as the miracle of feeding 5,000 people with a small amount of food. Because we struggle. Most of us probably haven't fed that many people that small amount of food. But most of us have been in a situation where life was hard. Where we met with a group of people. Any of you have friends and family? Ever mix that word? Framily? Ever heard of that? I have family, right? My people, the group of people I get to hang out with, that I do life with. We really try to encourage you all to do that. Because, yeah, it happens at home. Yeah, it happens at work. But when Jesus is asked what the greatest thing that we can do is, does he say to love God and to love your family? He doesn't, does he? He says, love God, love your neighbor. Now, does that include your family? You're darn right it does. But it's not just your family. Jesus invites us to open our doors, to be welcoming, to gather people in, to gather in small groups, to live life. We are meant to live life not just within our own homes and our own places of work. We are meant to live life with those around us outside of those places. And most of us find ourselves in a situation like that throughout the week. Maybe your kid's in marching band. Maybe they're at basketball. Maybe they are, I don't know, gymnastics. What if we saw every opportunity when we're around people, an opportunity to spread a little bit of kindness, to show a little love and a little grace and some generosity? What if every single place we were at, what if we had motive? What if we had an agenda? And our agenda isn't to win somebody over to some church. Our agenda is to make the world a better place, one that is more loving and inclusive and accepting and diverse and safe. What if we thought of every place that we went as an opportunity to do that? Our community tables, they give life to our families. They give life to our neighbors. And they give life to our friends. It's really important that we make them a priority in our life. I'm a part of one of the round tables here, and a couple of you in this room are a part. I'm a part of several of those, actually, but in one certain round table that we have, now this one has been going on for years, and it's got a great group of people, and we take turns suggesting either books. Now, sometimes we use the app, right? If we're in a series, Stephanie, raise your hand. Stephanie leads the group, and sometimes we'll use the app, right? Where we have questions about the sermon topic, and we've done it a few times, but more often than not, I like to read and read books, right? I say leaders are readers and leaders are learners. And so I'm constantly challenging people to learn, and I do that mainly through listening to books, because I don't sit down and read a book as much as I used to. I drive a lot, and I have my earbuds, and so I can listen to about a book a week. And so sometimes we read a book, sometimes we use the app, and it was Keith's turn to pick something, right? And so Keith's laughing because he knows the story I'm getting ready to tell. And so Keith, I love Keith. Keith preaches sometimes, right? And he's a wonderful human being. He's very thoughtful. He's just very, when I'm around him, I feel harmony and I feel whole. And Keith's pretty calm, right? Very, very reflective, meditative. And so we're sitting down in our group, and Keith's like, I would like to suggest we watch a TV show and talk about it. I'm like, that's a cool idea. And he says, and it's called The Midnight Gospel. And I'm like, what a great name for a wholesome TV show. And so some of you have seen The Midnight Gospel. And so my wife and I, we sit down the night, we're like, we're going to watch Midnight Gospel. So we get out the Roku remote, on the TV, and midnight, it takes forever to spell it because those stupid remotes, mine, you can't talk to mine. And so Midnight Gospel, and it comes up, and we're like, that can't be it. That's a cartoon. And which, by the way, it's not a cartoon, as Keith reminded me, but I call it a cartoon. And so we turn this show called The Midnight Gospel on, and I'm not really sure how to describe what was happening. Very abstract cartoon scenes and lots of carnage. And Stacy and I are sitting there, and we're about 5 minutes in, and I was like, this has to be the wrong show. There has to be another Midnight Gospel, because this does not look like gospel. This looks like war and sadness. And so I text the group. I'm like, hey, fellow people, help me out, because we're watching something called the Midnight Gospel, and the best way we could describe it was uneasy. And Keith's like, oh yeah, that's the one. Okay. So we continue to watch it, and bless Stacy's heart. But when you say that, something bad's coming. And so she's like, I can't do it. But as I watched it, now it was the oddest, What's it called? It's anime? Animation. It's not a cartoon. It's animation, okay? But there's conversation happening the whole time. And I'm not necessarily telling you all to watch this. Don't watch it with your children. But when I began to listen to what was going on, I began to hear things, and I'm like, oh, okay. This is gospel. Now, who knows what gospel means? Anybody? It does. That's right. The gospel means the good news. So if you ever hear a Christian say, I'm going to go spread the gospel, right? And then their version of the gospel is beating somebody over the head with some Christian book, I'm like, I mean, that could be part of the gospel. The gospel is good news for people, right? Jesus came to bring good news. And when I'm listening to this, and not watching, but when I'm listening to this show, I began to hear things and people having conversations, because really it's a podcast that they've turned into a show. Anyway, it was beautiful and wonderful, and it sparked one of the greatest conversations I think we've ever had in our small group. I mean, deep, meaningful, like crying, heart-wrenched, blood-soaked tears conversation around a dinner table one night. One of the best times I've ever had in a small group setting. And it came from some abstract animation thing called the Midnight Gospel. What I'm hoping you hear from that story is that regardless of where you find yourself in our communities, regardless of where you find yourself at work or at home or wherever you are, I believe that when we actually apply these principles that Jesus taught us and that our faith leads us towards, that it begins to awaken us. Something inside of us wakens up, right? It awakens our soul, and we begin to see both people and things around us differently. And if you call yourself an awoke person, or that you're awakening to something and it leads you to hate other groups of people or not like other people, that's not awakening. Awakening sees the good in people. Awakening sees the good in all things. And that good, I believe, is God. It has a source. We call that God. We call it love. And when we can see that in all things and in all people, that is the process of which Jesus, that path that Jesus is leading us down. And I find that it often happens when we're with other people and when we're sharing our stories, when they make us watch bad cartoons. We can find it in anything. I want to wrap up with a story about hedgehogs, right? I had a teaser on this, and I promised hedgehogs, golf, and miracles. I got 2 of those so far, so here's the last one. I grew up playing Sonic the Hedgehog. Anybody else? Nobody else? Genesis system? One person. Stephanie, thank you. Okay. So I read stuff all the time, and I found this story. And it's simply called The Hedgehogs. Now, a hedgehog, right, it's kind of this spiny thing, right? Sonic the Hedgehog protected himself when he curled up in a ball, right? And his spines protected him. So it says, it was the coldest winter ever. Many animals died because of this cold. The hedgehogs, realizing their situation, decided to group together to keep warm. This way they covered and protected themselves, but the quills of each one wounded their closest companions. After a while, they decided to distance themselves one from another, and they began to die, alone and frozen. So they had to make a choice. Either accept the quills of their companions or disappear from the earth forever. Wisely, they decided to go back to being together. They learned to live with the little wounds caused by the close relationship with their companions in order to receive the heat that came from the others. This is the way that they were able to survive. The best relationship is not the one that brings together perfect people, but when each individual learns to live with the imperfections of others and can admire the other person's good qualities, true relationship, true purpose, true faith, true love is often found. That means sitting across the table from people who may not think like us or sound like us. It means reaching out to our neighbor when we may not know them. It means maybe you have to awkwardly approach somebody, right, and talk to them It means that even when you're in small groups and community, yes, there are people that when you're close to them, sometimes they're going to hurt you. Hurt and pain is part of the journey. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying you allow yourself to be abused. What I am saying, though, that when you're close to people and you're vulnerable and you open yourself up to that kind of situation, there's going to be pain from time to time. You show me a happy marriage and a long marriage of 35, 40 years, I can promise you they have stories of pain and hurt. When we're close to each other, when we're living out our mission and vision to better our communities through small groups by constantly creating and launching them that we call micro-communities, when we are doing that, sometimes it's painful, but I promise you it's worth it. This week I have 2 challenges. The first challenge is I want you to either join, and if you're interested in being a part of one of our roundtables, to join or start a roundtable. I'm even willing to come and show you how we do what we do. If you want to do a book study, I'll come and show you. We'll give you training. We'll send you through a process in which you can create these communities. Sometimes they happen organically. Often I find when we're intentional and we make them a priority in our lives, that these can form through a process. The other thing is, I believe as a church that it is our job to give you all access and the opportunity to have common areas and common tables. In our year, there are 4 big things that we do, 4 big events. One of them is our trunk or treat that's coming up at the end of October. Now, what's a trunk or treat? We invite you to come out and to open up your trunk or your tailgate and to decorate it. And what does that create? You usually sit on the tailgate and there's a little table there, and what do? You hand out candy. That's a big event, but it's a community space in which we have the opportunity to show people, right, that we love them, that we care about them, that we think ideas like kindness and generosity and love, that these are really important. And so this is one of those 4 times. I want you to start a micro-community, a round table, join one or start a new one, but I also want you to sign up to do a trunk or treat. Decorate a trunk. For those of you who can't be here, we also have an option. You can buy candy and donate it for maybe those who can't afford to buy candy, but maybe they want to decorate a trunk. These are all ways in which we can give back to our community, to invest in other people, both in small groups, but also in larger community circles. As you think on that, all this information is in your bulletin. It's also in the email that I send out every week. As you think on those things, ways you can do that, start groups, start community, ways to give back, let's go to God in prayer. God, thank you for the opportunity to have family, God, to have the community, to have people around us that love us, that we can confide in, that we can live life with, that we can discuss the important things, God, that we can see past our imperfections and our flaws and get to the root of our hurt and our pain and to heal. God, these are not easy things, and I know is at least a few people in this room that are like, that's just not for me. And God, I just want you to reach into their soul right now. Reach into that person that thinks that's not for them and just let them know they're loved. God, many of us over these last few years have been very difficult and hurtful and painful and been through a lot of things. God, help us to reach beyond ourselves, to reach out into our communities, to be vulnerable, to open up, to trust, to be a part of something. God, that's not always easy. God, I pray that the spines of those around us, God, may they not hurt us. God, may we see the goodness in all. May we see that you are in and through all things and in all people. God, it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Will you stand and join us for our final song? That's not a piano. 1 second. Not that one either. There we go. I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see it now, I'm laying it down, and I know that I need you. I run to the Father, fall into grace, done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 oh. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your Son for redemption, the price for my heart. And I don't have a context for that kind of love. I don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace, done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 and again and again. Oh, oh. My heart has been in your sights long before my first breath. Running into your arms is running to life from death. And I feel this rush deep in my chest. Your mercy is calling out. And just as I am, you pull me in. And I know I need you now. I run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I run to the Father again and again. I run to the Father, fall into grace, done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 and again and again. Oh, 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 and again and again.
May we stop running. May we engage in those around us. My prayer is that each of you find space in your heart and your soul and with your time to invest in a community table, a round table, a conversation, a discussion. Go in peace.